The first thing you see is not a protest crowd. It is a video, a student in Kathmandu filming a mansion-lit rooftop, a politician's son dining in a glossy hotel, an influence on private jet tarmac, and then in the next clip, you scrolling through the same platforms to find work. That contrast is shorthand for what exploded across Nepal. A ruling elite living publicly in a way most people cannot, and a generation watching that display on devices they use for everything from job hunting to storytelling. The immediate spark was government action. The sweeping ban on dozens of social platforms introduced in early September, which in effect cut off the spaces where young people were organizing and where the scandal about Nepo kids and elite lifestyles was being shared. That shutdown did not happen in a vacuum. It collided with a long backlog of grievances: stubborn youth unemployment, rising living costs, and perceptions that public power benefits families, not citizens. The ban itself was presented by authorities as a regulatory move. To many use it looked like censorship time to silence a public shaming of privilege. The ban and the subsequent crackdown on street demonstrations are the proximate triggers people point to when they ask what set this off. If you want to know who these protesters are, look at the margins of the campus, not the halls of power. The movement is overwhelmingly young, a mix of late teens and 20s, many active on TikTok and Instagram, fluent in the language of memes and outrage, and quick to translate online anger into offline gatherings. Their complaints are simple and structural: corruption in government appointments and contracts, nepotism that locks careers and resources behind family names, and a lack of meaningful employment that pushes people to migrate for work abroad. What makes this generation different is their habits. They are hyper-visible online. They compare private lives of the elite to their own public struggles in real time, and they have a low tolerance for hypocrisy. When a viral thread catalogs the lifestyles of relatives of senior politicians side by side with an account of a family surviving on remittances, that resonance becomes combustible. Organizing was decentralized. There was no single leader with a single manifesto. Instead, 1,000 small networks and influencers amplified each other, and a mood crossed the cities. Enough. This is not just social media theater. It is political formation, a generational threat to the old bargains that kept patronage networks in place. How did a series of online posts turn into the largest unrest Nepal has seen in years? The pathway is both procedural and accidental. Demonstrations began mostly as peaceful rallies at city squares and near government buildings. Security forces responded with measures intended to disperse crowds: tear gas, water cannons, and mass arrests in some places. In several flashpoints, the confrontation escalated. Authorities used live ammunition in at least some instances, and hospitals reported dozens of casualties and hundreds injured in the early days of the unrest. Video clips of youth shot or dragged away circulated quickly, and each clip drew more people into the streets. The state's decision to impose curfews and deploy military hardware made the conflict more visible and amplified grievances. Human rights organizations immediately called for impartial investigations into the use of lethal force and urged restraint. Those calls underline a crucial point: whether the original protests were peaceful or not, the state's response became a central story in its own right. In short, a regulatory move produced a mass mobilization that, through escalation and heavy-handed responses, turned into a national crisis. The where matters because Nepal's geography has shaped its politics for decades. Kathmandu is the political heart and the site of most images, but the grievances extend beyond the valley. Years of migration for work, where families depend on remittances from abroad, mean that domestic job creation has not kept pace with expectations. Inequality is visible and concentrated. New malls, luxury hotels, and gated compounds stand near neighborhoods where informal labor powers daily life. Politically, the country has had cycles of coalition governments, shifting party loyalties, and a public sense that institutions rarely punish powerful insiders. For Gen Z, those institutional failures become personal. When the internet exposes evidence of privilege and the government closes those platforms instead of addressing the claim, it creates a narrative. The system will silence truth to protect itself. Add to that a wider regional context, borders where people move, economies linked by migration, and you have a protest that is local but speaks to global patterns of youth-led anger at elite capture. The immediate geography is Kathmandu and other urban centers. The deeper terrain is structural. Education systems that do not guarantee work, governance that often favors networks over merit, and an economy that funnels hope outward rather than building opportunity at home. What happens next is the single question that matters for both Nepalis and anyone trying to understand modern protest dynamics. In the short term, the political fallout already includes leadership shakeups. The prime minister's position became untenable amid the unrest and resignations, and cabinet changes followed. The fires at symbolic sites, parliament official residences, and some luxury properties are not only tactical acts of rage. They are messaging. The old architecture of power is vulnerable when it is exposed. The longer term depends on three linked outcomes. First, accountability. Will there be genuine independent probes into alleged excessive force and transparent investigations into corruption claims? Second, reform. Will political actors address the structural problems, job creation, merit-based governance, and transparent public contracting that the youth are calling out? Third, political realignment. When a generation is mobilized by shared grievance and shared platforms, traditional party machinery can lose its grip. For now, curfews, army patrols, and uncertain markets dominate the daily picture, and tourism, a major source of income, is at risk while stability is uncertain. The story is far from over. For anyone watching, the takeaway is plain. This uprising is both a consequence of immediate triggers and a mirror showing how a generation sees governance. If leaders want to answer it, they must do three things: listen with institutional openness, investigate fairly, and build alternative pathways to opportunity. The next weeks will tell whether Nepal moves toward reform or toward deeper cycles of mistrust.